watch out for bias. These things were trained on the internet. They were scraped on the internet. They scraped the internet to get their data. And, the internet reflects, I wouldn't say historical bias. It reflects the bias that exists in this society, perpetuates it.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us today as we go beyond the couch and explore the world of AI in psychology. I'm your host, Dr. Ernest Wade, a psychologist and AI strategist, and I want to welcome you to Beyond the Couch, AI in Psychology. Now, before we get started, you know that I always want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors without whom the show would not be possible. So first, we want to thank the American Board of Professional Psychology, also known as ABEP, the National Register of Health Service Psychologists, and Wade AI, my AI consulting company. Okay, so we get into the school psychology, and I'm really happy to have our guest today, Dr. Adam Lockwood, who is a nationally recognized leader in the ethical and effective use of artificial intelligence in school psychology. So Dr. Lockwood is an associate professor at Kent State University and the founder of Lockwood Educational and Psychological Counseling, where he conducts research and training on AI-assisted report writing, governance and ethics, and other AI-driven research. He's also the chair of the National Register of Health Services Psychologists Task Force on AI and Emerging Technologies. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks. One quick correction. It's Lockwood Educational and Psychological Consulting, not counseling.
Consulting, my mistake.
Yeah.
The Lockwood Educational and Psychological.
There's a free plug. I might as well get I didn't even get the plug right.
Let me make sure we get that right. The founder of the Lockwood Educational and Psychological Consulting, correct?
Mouthful, huh?
Yeah. But Adam, tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about how you got interested in AI, because I know you have a background in school psychology. How'd you make that connection?
Well, I've always had a little bit of an interest in tech. I didn't have a traditional higher ed experience. I actually started out in community college, and my first degree was an associate's in computer and network administration. So I did have a background in that, and actually was working towards a degree in computer science and mathematics. I love the mathematics, didn't like the computer science. And at some point I realized I can't do something just because it's going to be a good paying career. And I switched to psychology because I love psychology. So I kind of had this background 25 years ago in technology. And so I'd always kind of tinkered around with computers. And my original research was in assessment, and it was interesting. I enjoyed it, but when you come up for tenure in higher ed, for listeners who don't know, tenure is where it's harder for you to be fired, and you get a promotion too, so you get a little bit of a raise and a different title. I started thinking about what's my next step going to be? I don't want to do assessment anymore. I don't want to be complacent. And I just want to try something new. And right about that time, the ChatGPT thing happened. I instantly thought, and I still think I was correct, probably the only time in my life, that this was going to be revolutionary or disruptive, whatever you want to call it. But I knew instantly that I believed instantly that this was going to change things considerably. And so I had enough publications that I thought I could get tenure, and I just flipped my research on a dime. And so that's how I came into this. I'm a Johnny come lately. I haven't been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing it. My first publication was 2023 or 2024. And they've been ratcheting up. So this summer, 3 pubs because of the lag for academic publishing. The things I submitted a year ago are now coming up now. But
yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that background, especially because I'm a computer scientist as well. In my background, I was actually a computer scientist before I became a psychologist, so I really appreciate that background. But I want to ask you about something that you said. You said you felt like this was going to be revolutionary. Tell us a little about how you're seeing that in some of the research that you're doing.
Well, I mean, if you look at, surveys of business in general, knowledge workers in general, we're seeing adoption rates that are insane. Something like four times the adoption, the speed of adoption of things like the personal computer or the World Wide Web. Um, it's not even close. I think the latest numbers I saw for OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, they're saying they're up to 700 million weekly users, which is, I don't know, what is that, like 12% of the world population or something? Um, it's just insane, and it's happening so quickly. So I think our society at large, we're seeing really rapid change. Uh, if you look at the percentage of code that's being generated or is reported generated by companies, it's somewhere between 30 and, I think Claude, Anthropic saying 90% is being generated by AI. So the disruptiveness of this is happening. I don't think we've felt it yet. I think some of these job numbers that we're seeing, that they're like, oops, we didn't know that there was
Mhm.
a million less jobs than we thought. I think, I think when we look back, we're going to see that it's because of AI displacing jobs.
Mhm.
And so, um, yeah, I got off topic there, I think. But
Yeah.
I think
So
just
let
as
me so
a
let me
whole
ask you.
society, this has already been extremely disruptive. In our field, I think we're lagging behind, but we're starting to see it, I think, too.
Mhm. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the research that you've done specifically in the psychological assessments area. I know that you've done some research there that you've found some interesting results. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I've done, kind of related to what you're saying. I've done research looking at adoption by school psychologists, um, and then also the ability of large language models to write reports. So I don't know if you want to hear about either or
Yeah,
both.
let's talk about the ability of the large language models to write reports. I think that's a really interesting area.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the first things I thought is like, oh, this technology can write pretty well. And I was like, I wonder if it could write a report. And so I started dumping in mock data and just seeing how it could write. And it did a pretty good job. And I'm talking, this is like 2.5 years ago. Um, and so I wanted to study that empirically, not just me tinkering around. And so I started thinking about ways that could be done. And I worked with some friends at some different universities, one at in Memphis, one at Baylor, one in Oklahoma State University. And started thinking, how can we examine this empirically? So what we did first is we came up with four mock data sets, just made up data. So no PHI, no personal identifiable or personal health information. And we came up with some kind of mock data sets that would represent intellectual disability. ADHD was another condition, intellectual age, depression, and anxiety. And this is all child data. So this is geared towards child psychologists. And so we came up with these data, and we wanted to compare humans versus AI. And so what we did is we hired some psychologists, paid them $150 an hour, and said, I'm going to give you some fake data, and I want you just to write a report, just how you normally would, and have at it. Record your time so I can pay you. and didn't tell them the purpose of the study was to compare them to AI. I just said I'm doing research. I can tell you more about it afterwards if you're interested. But are you interested? It's low stakes because it's not real data. So I got 4 people to do those, 1 for each condition. Then had ChatGPT 4, the original 4. Remember the one 2023? Because academia takes forever to go through the peer review process.
Yeah, and we're in
So
5 now.
yeah, 5 now, and yeah, and so fed it the 4 different ones. Single shot, which means I didn't do any iterative prompting. I didn't do any prompting at all, other than say, um, here's some data. Write a report with DSM diagnosis. And by the way, if anyone's interested, this is all up on Open Science Foundation. All of the prompts, the actual video of the reports being generated, um, all the study materials. So if people want to get more of an idea, they can go check it out. But the prompt was write a comprehensive psychological report, including DSM-5 diagnosis and recommendations using the following data. Cut and pasted it. That was it.
So very simple, very
Very
straightforward.
simple. No, hey, I want more in the background. No, I don't like to use this language here. No polishing, very little prompting. No, you're a psychologist. Nothing. Just go at it. Here you go. And recorded how long it took, and took the reports. The one thing we did do is match the formatting. I didn't want that to be a confound. So, I did format it to be exactly like the human. So it was really, I wanted to know the content, not the formatting.
So how long did it take to generate those reports?
For humans or for
both,
AI?
comparatively speaking? How much did the human take? How much did the ChatGPT take?
Well, let me ask you, how long do you think it took a human to write a 4 or 5 page report?
Well, if you're asking me about how long it would take me to write a report, I really don't like writing reports, so I would prolong it, and it'd probably take me days. But if you force me to, in a few hours, probably, right? Because I've got to review the data, I've got to do all that kind of stuff before I actually start the writing. So
on average, 2.5 hours.
Okay.
These were child psychologists, 2 clinical, 2 school psychology, both licensed psychologists. All licensed psychologists, people who do this a lot. And in my postdoc, I worked at the University of Kansas Medical Center, and I can tell you get pretty quick at it. you at least in the setting I was in, you don't bill per hour, you bill per test. So you got to be pretty quick. So 2.5 hours, that's pretty fast. That's good. But AI took on average 91.5 seconds. So 100 times as long for a human.
Not even a full 2 minutes.
Yeah. And all of DSM diagnoses were correct. Now these were kind of softball. They weren't your differential diagnosis of something tricky. They were pretty straightforward, cut and dry. But yeah, so they very fast, very, very fast. And so we have these 8 different reports. You have ADHD human and ADHD AI, intellectual disability AI, human intellectual disability, depression human, depression AI, and anxiety human and anxiety AI. So we had these, and so we wanted to look at perceived quality by licensed psychologists. So we managed to get about 250 licensed psychologists. Vast majority were clinical psychologists, and they each got a pair. So they got either the the ADHD human and AI, or the ADHD intellectual disability. Sorry, not ADHD, sorry. Intellectual disability, AI or human. We controlled for order effects, so recency and primacy. So like half the people that got the ADHD condition got, AI first, half got human first. We didn't want it to be affected at all by which they saw first. And then we had them rate preferences in a bunch of areas. And this is based on the report writing literature. The neuropsychology people especially have a lot about this, and it's because they write a lot, a lot of reports. It's their bread and butter. So we dug into there, like, what are some things that, we should be looking at? Readability, writing style, organization, length of sentences, jargon, a good summary section, recommendation center section, and then we just asked overall, which do you prefer, and overall, what's your rating? The last thing we asked is, if this was a report written by a doctoral, postdoc supervisee, would you sign off on this report? Because I thought, well, it's all well and good for people to say, oh yeah, this is good, but that's where the rubber hits the road. Like, would you really sign off? And what
would you put your name on it?
Yeah. And so what we found is we did find differences. Mostly people preferred humans, but not much. So for listeners who haven't taken statistics in a while, and good for them, because most of us don't enjoy those classes. I do, but if you think back, you have statistical significance and you have clinical or practical significance. And statistical significance is there any difference there? And clinical significance is, does that difference really matter? Is it the kind of the so what? And the example I use when I used to teach research methods was, you have a drug, you give it to 1,000 people. On average, they lose a half a pound. That's statistically significant because, yeah, they did actually lose weight. But practically speaking, or clinically speaking, that's not significant. It's a very low effect size because a half a pound isn't much to lose to take a drug that probably has a bunch of side effects or costs money or whatever. So those just giving a little primer to people who haven't taken stats in a while. There were statistical significance, but most of the time, that practically speaking, that significance was small. The effect size was small. And so for writing, yeah, there was people preferred humans. For organization, they preferred humans. Overall, they preferred humans. They were more apt to sign off if it was a human. But the only two areas where there was a moderate effect size, that means really they're like, we really prefer, was summaries, and they liked human summaries better, and recommendations, and they liked AI recommendations significantly better. Both of those moderate effect size, so quite a bit they preferred.
So say that again. They liked human summaries and AI recommendations.
Correct.
Okay.
And they preferred humans to AI. So we asked them, like, of the two you read, which do you prefer? 49% said humans, 36% AI, 14% said I didn't have a preference. So there were preferences for humans within most areas, with the exception of recommendations. But those differences were mostly very, very small. The effect size was small. And in fact, when I went back and I looked at it, I just want to see if they gave this a rating of average or better for human versus AI. The differences basically washed away. Because I think, even if you're like saying this is average, so average, good, or very good, you're saying that this report is, okay, it's sufficient. And so if we looked at overall, 62.5 of the respondents that read ChatGPT 4 reports said it was at least average or good or very good, compared to 70% of humans. For reading, like readability, there was no difference. 91.5% said average or better for both.
So, so let me ask you, because this is this is really interesting. Especially this was a few years ago, and you didn't even do any prompt engineering. You just gave it, some basic instructions. Overall, what does this tell you, right? What are you taking away from this overall?
What I take from this is 2 years ago, AI was good enough to essentially be take over a lot of report writing tasks.
Mhm. Okay.
And that's without any help. If you were to use this wisely with prompting, and I consult with people in private practice on how to integrate uh, AI into their workflows, um, they're actually improving their reports. They get better reports when they use AI to help them.
So I think it's also important to mention that from what you said as well, is these were easier assessments to write, right? We're not talking about super complex things, and you're also not advocating for just no human in the loop, right? You're saying it actually will help humans rather than replace humans. Am I getting that right?
I would my one of my biggest fears is descaling and automation bias, and the two are interrelated. And that's people losing their skills and blindly
Mm-hmm.
following technology. So I would never ever hope that people will blindly follow AI. The truth is, some of us will, and people will slip up because they're time pressures. Um, but no, I'm definitely not advocating for that. You can't blindly follow this technology. There's too hallucinations are too common of an occurrence. You don't want to lose those skills yourself. No.
Yeah. But at the same time, with the advantages and the time savings that AI provides, eh, can you just sort of um, sit by the side and not use it and not pretend like it's not there and not engage in it? How do you balance those two, right? The risks versus the benefits.
That's a tough question. That's going to be up to every single practitioner. I think, quite honestly, I think the billing rates are going to come down. They're going to say, you can do this in less time and we're going to pay you less. Um, I could be wrong about that, but
Because they're going to expect you to be using AI, so there's going to be an expectation that you're going to be
yeah,
using that you're going to have to use AI.
yeah. I wrote a little piece for the communique about the Red Queen effect. Are you familiar with that?
I don't think so. Can you explain that to us?
It comes from like evolutionary biology, but it's applied to economics and technology. It's essentially, no matter how much more quickly you go, the ground underneath you just speeds up. So that technology doesn't ever really save us time because we're given more, or it ends up being self-serving, like the tail wagging the dog. You gotta, you know, I think about, emails are supposed to save you so much time, but they're the biggest time suck I have. 3 hours a day I'm answering emails. Um, so yeah, I think that Red Queen effect will happen. That you're just going to have more to do. That you're not, unless unless advocacy happens, that we're just going to have to do more,
Yeah.
because the technology is going to allow us to be more
But,
quicker.
that's an interesting concept, and I'm also thinking about, it's in terms of where and how you use AI, right? I'm thinking partly of the law that was signed into effect in Illinois recently about not being able to use AI in the clinical setting, but could use it for administrative things like that and things like that. So it'd be I'm interested in your thoughts on where do you think AI is going to have the most impact? Where do you think we're going to start seeing it more and more from a psychological point of view?
In practice, Or, I mean, we already see people using it as a therapist. Illinois can ban it all they want, but I can get on ChatGPT and talk about my problems with it. You can't, from a user end, you 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 can't. It's happening.
Hmm.
But as far as us as practitioners, is that what you're
Yes.
asking?
Yeah.
So you know, every administrative task you can think of, whether that's generating treatment planning, SOAP notes, report writing, scheduling, generating emails, um, anything writing related, um, and more.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I can see that, especially as it provides efficiencies in those areas, and there's some of those things that, as clinicians and practitioners, we may not enjoy the administrative aspect of that work, right? And so it may allow us to focus more on the clinical side. Can you? I know you do a lot of consulting around doing using AI ethically and responsibly. What are some of the things that people should be thinking about and considering as they're thinking about using AI in their practice, especially as you're saying, as it may become an expectation for them to be using AI?
Watch out for bias. These things were trained on the internet. They were scraped on the internet. They scrape the internet to get their data. And, the internet reflects, um, I wouldn't say historical bias. It reflects the bias that exists in this society, perpetuates it. There was an interesting study that came out, was published, I want to say about 2 months ago, where they had some vignettes that were race neutral, that were race implied, and were race specific or explicit, I should say. And the the well, I could pull up the findings, but basically we're seeing in psychology that racism is making its way into the generated output. So number one, be mindful of especially if this is used for predictive purposes, which it already is, and things like dropout prediction, um, and for saying who gets treatment, who doesn't. Be very mindful of that because it's going to reflect the inequalities that we've had in this country from the start and continue to have. So that's one thing that practitioners should be cognizant of. Another one that really I worry about is automation bias. That is, we've seen with physicians using electronic medical records. The research seems to be pretty clear that people start to blindly follow technology. Um, they just become so used to it that they kind of give over their clinical decision making, and their confidence becomes less. Um, so that's something I worry about. And I when I present, I say to people like, who blindly follows technology, and very few people's hands go up. And I go, well, who here uses Google Maps? Hands go up. I go, do you check to make sure, like get out your map first and make sure it's taking you to the right place? Well, no. A few people will say yes, they do, and I'm like, okay. I say, who uses a calculator? People, yeah. Do you double check that math by hand? No, we blindly follow technology already. And then I say, who does it in their practice? And all hands go down. And I go, well, who here uses Q Global, which is the automated scoring software? And everyone's hands goes up, and I go, who double checks that? And very rarely do people double check that. So we're already blindly following technology, a lot of us in practice,
Yeah, and I think I would
and I
say
worry
on
about
that
that.
one especially that I think this is where AI, or and specifically the technology of AI, takes advantage of some of the previous technologies, because you like Google Maps, maybe not Google Maps, but calculators and other psychological assessments are tested and validated, and so you can trust those things. But AI is absolutely not tested and validated, right? It's just, as you said, it's trained on the internet, which no one should, no one should believe 100% of. But there's this assumption that because it sounds so smart and is able to, put together these really intelligent looking and sounding sentences that, oh yeah, it must know what it's talking about, right?
Yeah. It's also those things are deterministic. That is, if I was to use Q Global to write a report, every time it would give me the exact same output. With large language models, it's generative. Every time you're going to get a different report, and it can
Yeah.
be more or less biased. It can be more or less accurate. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
always kind of rolling the dice a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's really important for people to understand the black box behind LLMs, especially, right? We don't, even the developers don't fully understand how or why it's doing it, generating what it's generating. So I think that's really important for people to be aware of as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
Adam,
when they started integrating chain of thought and started looking at some of the thought processes, sometimes it's a little scary. I don't know if
mhm,
you're familiar with the anthropic agent misalignment studies, but there's some really kind of weird
mhm,
stuff that goes on when it tells
yeah.
you what it's thinking.
Adam, I would love to hear more about some of the other research that you've done, but I want to be respectful of time and say, how do people contact you if they want to, continue the conversation, learn more about some of the research that you've been doing? What's a good way of reaching you?
So I have a blog. It's lockwoodconsulting.net. And if you go there, I have a blog, and it's a really good way to see um, free information as far as I do when a new study comes out that I'm interested in. I blog about it. It's a way for me to consume and kind of um, be more actively involved in it. Um,
Hmm.
so that's a good place. If yeah, on my website, my email, my phone number is on there. But yeah, I
Okay.
love it. People. Anyone who wants to talk about anything AI related, I love it. I'm on LinkedIn too. Yeah.
Excellent. And then I always want to take advantage of the experts and get some free consulting. If I'm interested in getting AI in my practice, apart from the things that you've already mentioned, what should I be looking out for? What should I be paying attention to? How do I get ready?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I got to be very clear about that. But the thing that I the place I start with people I'm consulting with is let's get a BAA, a business associate agreement in place
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
ensures that whatever technology you're using is HIPAA compliant.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's get something in writing. Let's get an agreement to make sure that client patient data is protected. Um,
Yeah.
and that,
I think
that
that's
does before you even enter redacted information. That's the number one.
Yeah, I think that's such a great piece of advice, especially as we're thinking about risk management, especially in terms of protecting not just client data but your practice as well, right? Protecting yourself and your organization in terms of the work that you're doing from any errors or any issues that may occur as a result of using the AI. Which, as you're saying, there's more and more of an expectation on that, right? And so we'll have to see how that goes. Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a pleasure having you. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
All right. And if you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review. Feedback is a gift, and we love gifts, and we hope you will join us again. Thank you.